Hello, everyone. This is Kat Pullen. We still have quite a few people joining, so we are going to pause for just a few moments. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Kat Pullen, part of the marketing team here at Cohesive. Thank you for joining us for the Maximo Back to Basics web series, where we will showcase core Maximo functionality and features your organization may not be taking advantage of and manage, part of the new Maximo Application Suite. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send a link with it. Pardon me, we will send an email with the recording link and a copy of the slide deck within 24 hours of the presentation. We will mute the phone lines throughout the presentation. If you have a question, and we do encourage them, please enter them in the question box field and we will address them at the end of the meeting. Today's presentation is Working with Asset Templates, presented by Leanne Hornby. Hello, Leanne. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and give you presentation rights.
Perfect. Thanks, Kat. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you were able to join us today. As Kat mentioned, we're going to focus on the working with asset templates and see where it might add some value into your organization. This is the first of many webinars for the Cohesive's new Back to Basics series, where our goal really is to highlight some of the existing base Maximo functionality and the features that are available that your organization might not be using today to help you maximize your return on investment. We're going to be presenting this content in the Maximo Application Suite because we want to give you a chance to see MAS and specifically the Manage application. The focus for this series is going to be more on functional topics, but we do have plans to start incorporating more technical topics in the future. As Kat mentioned, we're encouraging questions throughout this. So as those come up, please pop those in the chat, and then we will address them at the end of the presentation. Okay, for those of you who I have not met before, my name's Leanne Hornby. I am a functional Maximo consultant here at Cohesive. I have been working with Maximo for over 17 years now, and most of my career has been based out of Calgary, Alberta. For the last 3 years, I've been part of the US service delivery team. This year, I'm really focusing on internal MAS enablement activities, creating content that we can share with you, our customers, as you start to embark on your journey towards the Maximo Application Suite. In terms of today's agenda, we're focused on the asset template application. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is the asset template application, why should you or why could you be using it, and then we'll talk about the two key functions within that, where we're actually creating the template itself and what that looks like, and how we can create assets from that template, as well as how we can take that template and apply it to existing assets that are in our registry. We'll do a quick overview of what that looks like, and then we'll get in and do a demonstration. I've got a template created that I'm going to walk you through and show you what that looks like when we're creating that new and applying that. And then we'll wrap things up with a little bit of a Q&A. So let's get into it. So what are asset templates? For those, it's really a way for you to standardize your asset information in a single place and then apply that information to multiple assets in just a few simple steps. Those asset records, you can create them from that template, as I mentioned, or you can apply them to something that already exists today. Alternatively, what we do today, or most of us that aren't using this application, is we're manually creating those records either through a data load or an import, or we're creating them one by one or making those updates individually, which requires a lot of effort. If you think about it kind of from a business perspective, I'm going to use a use case here where, let's say your organization has just purchased 20 new laptops and we need to issue those out to new employees that have just started. Traditionally, we would create that asset record for a laptop one at a time, or we would create it once and duplicate it. If you're using the asset template application, you can just have that single template, which you would create once, and then you can apply it to create all 20 records in just a few clicks. And then you're able to reuse that again in the future. So for those of you that are using job plans today, very similar functionality. You create it once and use it multiple times. Some of the common information that you would capture on an asset template would be the description of that asset, the type, if you're categorizing your asset types, manufacturing and vendor information, if you're tracking things like purchase price or replacement cost, if you're prioritizing your asset records, that's another value that we're tracking in here. Spare parts and the quantities associated with that, PM schedules, meters, if those are being used, classifications and attributes, all of those are captured in there. As part of the Maximo Application Suite, you will also be able to include calibration data and data sheets, because now the calibration application becomes part and parcel with Maximo Manage in Mass. Why should you consider using asset templates? As I mentioned, once you've got a template created, you can then use that multiple times again in the future. You're able to create net new records or apply those to existing records. And regardless of the approach that you're taking, it gives you the flexibility to create or update multiple records at a single time. By using the asset template application, it just gives you an opportunity to streamline your data entry, which is going to help reduce the potential for errors. So nice, clean data happening in kind of a big bang approach. It's going to make your process for creating records or updating records a lot more efficient, because you can do that all at once. And then subsequently, that together is all just going to increase your data integrity and improve the data that's captured on the records, as well as reported, because you're putting in those standardized, a standardized structure with your data. As I had mentioned, you get to create this template once and use that many times. In the event you have a template that you need to adjust the functionality to duplicate that template and then update it and apply it, that's available as well. So let's think of, maybe we have a template for a pump and we want to get a little bit more granular and differentiate between our different types of pumps. You can duplicate a template and make those changes as necessary. And again, it's kind of forcing or putting in some controls around the data that we're going to capture here. So making sure that we've got some standard quality control rules in place. So we'll just take a quick look here at what that looks like. I'll just talk to quickly kind of what the different tabs and pages are in the application before we get into our demo. Our first tab, or our main tab, is that asset template tab, where you're capturing all of the common information about the template. There are minimal fields here that are required when you're creating an asset template, but just like every other application in Maximo Manage, specific fields can be set as required based on your organization's business processes and rules. again, to support your consistency of data collection. In here, as you can see on the screenshot, the only required field is the unique ID. But again, we can adjust that based on your business needs. Next up, we have the spare parts tab. This gives us the ability here to associate any spare parts or non-rotating items that apply to that particular asset type. So here we can adjust the quantity for each of the spare parts that get identified. And then you have the ability to record any comments or remarks that's going to support that relationship to the asset. When a new asset is created from the template, or the template's applied to something existing, all the information here on this spare parts tab will cross over to the spare parts tab of the actual asset record. Next up, we have the PM tab. So this is where we're associating any master PM templates to the asset template. And so with that being said, you must build out your master PM template first in that application before you can reference it on here. So similar to asset templates, the master PM application is where you're building a repeatable, reusable PM template. It gives you the ability here to identify time-based or meter-based frequency. You can specify active dates and seasonal time restrictions, and identify any job plans that may be required to support that work that needs to be done on that schedule. When the master PM is set to active, you can then associate it here to the asset template. And then once that asset template has been finalized and set to an active status, we again are either applying to existing or creating net new. That action in itself is then going to also create the preventative maintenance record for each one of the assets that the template touches, whether again net new or existing ones. And then from there, you're able to actually go into the individual PM records that get created, make adjustments as needed, and set those to active so that they can then be kicked off following your PM schedule. Next, we've got our meters tab. So if you're tracking any kind of performance metrics on your assets, you may want to consider leveraging one or more meters here. So you can think maybe there's things such as runtime hours or odometer meter readings or temperature, vibration. Similar to what you saw in the PM tab, you have to create those meters first and foremost in the meter application, and then apply them here on the asset template. And again, once those records are created or the template's been applied, that meter information will cross over to the meter tab in the asset application. And then from there, you're able to take meter readings on the asset itself or record those at the work order level as work is being completed on that piece of equipment. And next here, we've got the specifications tab. This is where we are going to classify our asset and identify any of the attributes that you might be using to help identify or organize or group your assets into. One of the benefits of using classifications and attributes is that you're able to refine your advanced searching capabilities when you're looking for a particular piece of equipment, as you can search by those asset attribute values. Before we classify an asset template, again, the supporting classification and attributes need to be defined in the classifications application. When you apply the classification at the template level, the attributes will also populate in that specifications tab. From here, you can update those on the asset template, or you can update those on the actual record once the template has been applied. The next piece we'll talk, again, I just want to touch on, I'm not going to go over the data sheets part. That's more on the calibration side of things. If you're using calibration today and have questions, I'm happy to follow up with you offline on that. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into actually using it. So you've heard me say a few times now, there are two different ways that we can use the asset templates. You're either creating net new records from a template, or you're taking the template and applying it to existing records. The second option is great for those of us who have already have an asset history and want to now improve the data. It makes things a lot easier. Both allow you to create or update multiple records at the same time, and all the information that's recorded on that asset template will cross over to the individual asset records. Once you've used the asset template to generate new records or update your existing ones, you can also look at the view asset template usage option. So I'll show you this when we get into our demo. It's on our sidebar navigation under the More Action menu. This is going to show you where this template has been applied. It's the easiest way to see which asset records have been touched by this template. Okay, so let's get into this here. So I'm gonna switch over here to the Maximo Application Suite, and I'm going to log in. Apologies, I've been sitting here on this screen. We'll just get ourselves logged in. All right. So when I'm logging into the Maximo Application Suite, it's actually going to take me to the Suite Navigator. This is now the landing page when accessing Mass. And from here, I can determine which application that I'm going to work in. So we are working in Manage, previously known as Maximo. I tried to say Maximo Manage to help with that transition. But we'll launch that application and it's going to bring us to our Start Center. So this should look familiar to everyone. Look and feel, for those of you who have not seen Maximo Manage before, the look and feel is slightly different. IBM always improves that UI every time they roll out a new version. So it's slightly different. Functionality from an end user perspective is still very, very similar. So I'm going to navigate over to the asset template application, which is part of the asset module here. So we'll bring that up. Okay. And so first thing we're going to do here is I've got a asset template created that I'm going to walk you through and show you kind of all of those different components that we talked about here. So I've got a template for new Dell laptops. We're going to kind of follow that use case. I think it's relatable for all of us, regardless of the industry that we're from. And let's use that scenario where our IT team has purchased 12 new Dell laptops, and we're going to distribute those out to net new employees. So we don't have those asset records created today. We want to take our template and apply that to create net new records for us and make sure all the information on our template crosses over. So a few things to touch on. In the details section, this is all the information that's going to start to cross over to our individual asset record. So starting with our description, we've got an asset type if you're categorizing your assets. I'm also able to identify who is my manufacturer, who is my vendor, if those are applicable. If we are also tracking things like purchase price or replacement cost, that information can be recorded here. Asset priority level, if that's something your organization is using today, you would reference that here as well. And then there's a section below here for calibration details, if that's applicable to your business. We navigate over to the spare parts tab. This is where we can start to identify any spare parts that will impact this asset. So in the event your organization also issues things like a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse as part of that laptop, you could have those listed here as spare parts, so that on that asset record, you can see what is required or what may be required at either issuing or moving out this equipment, or parts that might need to support the actual asset. On the PMs tab, this is where we're identifying the master PM that is associated with the asset that will subsequently create our PM record. So I will quickly pop over to the master PM application and just show you what that looks like. Very similar to what the PM application itself looks like. Again, we're recording the high-level details that are pertinent, and we'll cross over to the source PM. We are identifying our work type, our work status, work priority, lead time, if that's a process that you're following, how early your PM can get generated. We've got our frequency tab that matches, again, what you guys are used to seeing on the PM application. We can do time-based or meter-based or both. We've got our seasonal dates and active date requirement. And then the last one here is our job plan. So again, able to navigate to the job plan application and build that out as we would normally. If your job plans exist already, perfect. You can just apply that on your master PM. And so again, this one just looks very simple and straightforward. And the other caveat just to, I want to make sure I touch on is all of these records that are associated or interwoven, we need to make sure that they are active. Otherwise, the process will fail at some point. So you need to make sure you have an active job plan on a master PM that's in an active status referenced on your asset template. So let's return back master PM, and then we'll go back to our asset template application. Excuse me. The next one to touch on here would be meters. So if we are tracking, let's say usage of your laptop, or if we're maybe they're tracking runtime hours, how long is this being used, so we can have a better idea to failure. That meter would then be referenced here and defined out. And then last but not least is the specifications. So we're classifying this here as a laptop, and I've put in certain specifications so that we can track those at the individual asset level. Okay, so we've got all of that in place here. The next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that our status of our asset template is active. Similar to a job plan or to a PM, you're not able to move forward in the process, create new records in a draft status. So we're going to change our status here to be active. And once we have that updated here, then we are able to now create those records. So we're going to start by generating some new assets. So the first thing we're going to do is select our site. I'm working in a multi-org, multi-site environment. So I'm going to choose Bedford as my site. And after identifying that, I get this generate new assets dialog box. And so from here, I've got a couple of sections that I need to fill out. So we'll take these one at a time here. The top one here is our default asset table data. So the fields that are referenced in here will apply to all of the assets that we create. So it just makes things a little bit easier if we populate the information here. It'll then allow us to, it'll do some of the heavy lifting for us as it creates records. So the location that I'm going to store these laptops at is our computer lab room. So I'm going to put that location in. And my status defaults to not ready. That's the setting that I have. I don't want to have to go in and update each individual one to be in an operating or an active status. So I'm going to set that here. If your business rules are everything has to start in a not ready status, and you do have the flexibility to leave that as is and then change the status at the individual asset record level. The installation date, so what date are we installing these? We're going to say that those have arrived today. We're putting those into place. Serial number, if this is something that you track and the serial number of your assets have some sort of similarity, maybe they're prefixed or they have a suffix, you could put that in there. So I'm going to say that I have a prefix on my serial number of Dell 000 and add the last little piece at each asset level. We have an ability to track or record a depreciation start date here, and also our PM start date. So this is kind of when do we want that PM schedule to be initiated. It defaults to today's date when we're creating those records, but we do have the ability to move that forward. So I'm going to update this here. And again, once the actual PM records are created by Maximo Manage, once we've created the asset records, you can go into those PMs and adjust them accordingly, because the PMs are created in a draft status. So it just gives you a little bit of flexibility. So as I scroll down here, the next section is our generate asset numbers. So this is where we're defining how many assets are we creating. So in this example, I think I said 12. So I'm going to put 12 in the quantity, and then we can put our starting asset number. So if your organization has a specific numerical naming convention for your asset records, you can leverage this. If your organization is just using the auto numbering, then you would leave this blank, and the system will just pick up the next asset number in line. If your organization is prefixing asset numbers, you can enter that prefix in, and the same applies for the suffix. If you've got a suffix on your numbering, you can do that as well. I'm going to start my numbering here at 900 or 9,000, sorry, just to kind of for quick find. And I'm going to leave out a prefix and a suffix. And so from here, I'm now going to hit this generate asset icon, and it's going to take everything from my template, everything in the default asset table data, and the generate asset numbers, and it's going to present a list of assets in this table for me as to what that's going to look like. It's not actually going to create those assets, but it's going to put them in a placeholder here for me so that I can see what is this going to look like. So the first thing I'm going to point out is the asset numbering. I listed it as starting at 9,000. The first one that comes available to me is 9,003. So that indicates 9,001 and 9,002 have already been used. So it's just taking the next in line. And you can kind of see that as these are broken up in their numbering. It applies the computer lab location to all of the assets in the table. Same with our status, everything's listed as operating, and then our serial number is prefixed based on what we had in that table. The installation date is also listed here as well. In the event that you want to put in your serial number here, you can do that as part of the kind of your data entry or data recording. The system will just cross this over whatever we put in here and populate that on the actual record for us. So I'll just do a couple so that you can see the difference. If we're happy with what we see here and we're ready to move forward, then the next piece is we're just going to go ahead and select OK. And when we do that, Maximo Manage is then going to go ahead and create those 12 records, again, taking everything from the asset template and what we put in that default table data and apply that to the individual record level. So we get a confirmation message here that our asset template's been applied. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Before I jump over to the asset application, I do just want to show you here under the more actions, this is the view asset template usage. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a list of all of the asset records where this has been applied. And what the cool thing is about this view is as we go in and make changes to the asset template and apply it to these now existing templates, you're going to get a new entry in. So let's say we make a change to the template and we apply it to asset 9003. When I come in here and look at this, I can see that, you know, it was originally created on 4/18, and then there's going to be an entry under that for when we modified it, and this modified toggle button will be turned on to show you that it has been modified since it was created. So it gives you a little bit of a history here as to sort of what version of the template you're looking at. Okay, so now I'm gonna head on over to the asset application. And we're gonna look for those records. So I'm just going to type in the description because that's what, that's kind of my unique identifier, going to show me here those 12 records that we've created. And now I can open those up individually and take a look at how that's been applied. So in the event I want to change the description of my record here, I can do that and change that accordingly for each, for some, for none. It's showing here my asset type has crossed over. We selected the IT asset type, and directly below that, it's referencing the asset template that was used to create this record. As I continue to scroll down into some of the other details, you can see where my location exists. You can see that my serial number has crossed over in the format that I had it recorded. And as I scroll down into kind of the purchasing information, you can now see the vendor, the manufacturer, installation date, and even our purchase price here at the very bottom. If we put spare parts or meters on that template, those would be referenced here. The next one I want to talk to is the specifications. So we had classified this asset as a laptop. Those attributes have now crossed over, and I can actually come in here and start to record the different values here for processor, screen, RAM, storage, graphics, etc. In the event that, you know, some of these attributes we maybe don't want to track on this particular asset, you can come over and remove that by just hitting the trash can. And the same applies if you're looking to add a new attribute. You can do the same by inserting a new row on the table, choosing an attribute from your list, and adding that in to that record. So just a little, just wanting to show you the flexibility really of what you can do on the actual assets level once you've created that record. The last piece I want to show you here is the PM that gets created. So from our work tab, this is going to show us our work history. So this view will show us all of the work orders and the tickets that get created against this asset. On the view work details tab, this is going to show you a little bit more. So if I click on the PM tab, this is going to show me the PM record that's been created. So you can see here, I've got PM 1034 and it's in a draft status. So I can right from here, navigate over to that PM record and look at how that was set up. So it's got my description here for an annual laptop inspection. It's pulling over my master PM that was created. And then as I scroll down, it's showing that this is tied to this specific asset, my lead time crossed over, my job plan, my work type, my work order status, my priority, all of that information crossed over. The earliest next due date, that's what we put in that column for PM start date. So that's listed here. We can go through each of the tabs here to see kind of what information crossed over. At this point, we can now update our status to being active. And now from here, we can either manually generate the PM work order, or if we're using the Wogen cron task, the record will now, the cron task will be applied to that record and will generate the next PM work order on whatever that predefined schedule is. Okay, so I'm going to return back to the asset tab. So that is how we create new assets from an asset template. Now we're going to do the flip side, where we're going to take that template that we were just working in, and we're going to apply it to some existing asset records. So using that use case of, you know, we've got existing asset records in our system, and now we want to improve the data quality and the data integrity that's in there. So we're building a template for what we want that to look like, and we're going to then apply that to those existing records. So similar to what we saw with the creating net new records, your asset template has to be in an active status in order to apply it to existing records. And so we're going to use the one we did in the previous walkthrough. And so on the left-hand nav under common actions, there is the apply to existing assets. So I'm going to pull that up. And again, it's going to ask me what site am I looking for? And I'm going to pull that, that list up here. So we also get a default asset table data in our apply to existing asset dialog box. And so a couple of things here that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my status is set to operating, and I am going to adjust my PM start date to be in alignment with what we just did. The records I'm going to choose, I already know that they don't have that PM associated with it, and I want to make sure that, again, standardization. So by updating this, we'll make sure that PM is in alignment with the records that we just created. So once you've filled in your default table data, the next piece is we're going to select the assets that we want to apply this to. So when we choose the select assets, it's going to show you a list of all of your asset records. The full list will be in here. And so from here, I can filter for what it is that I'm looking for. A couple of things to note. If you are applying a asset template to existing laptops where they already have asset template, so let's say we made updates to the asset template and we want to reapply those again, you can search by asset template number and it will filter those records that the template has been used. I'm going to I'm going to search by the description. I can spell properly, and I'm just going to search for all of my laptop records. So that narrowed it down to 78 for me, 12 of which are the records that we just created. But I want to apply them to these standard laptop computers. So I'm just going to select the first 5 in the list, and we'll make a change here. So once I've selected those records here, I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and it's going to bring those records into my table. You'll notice here that it has adjusted the status to make sure that it's operating. If we want, we can apply that same serial number feature. So I did miss that step previously, but just wanting to show you that there's still the flexibility to kind of add in this table before we actually apply the template. And once we have everything outlined and we're ready to go, we're simply just going to go ahead and hit OK. And as we do that, Maximo Manage is going to go find those 5 assets. It's going to take all the information that we put in the template and it's going to apply it to that. So we get a confirmation here that that's been completed. If I pop over to my view asset template usage, now we're going to see here, it's in numerical order. So the 12 we created earlier have been pushed down. And I have 5 more up here at the top saying that these 5 assets now also have the asset template applied to it. So let's go take a look at that in the asset application. So I'll filter for those. So right here, starting at 1965 and down, you can now see we have those 5 Dell laptops. I will open this up here. All right, and so we can see here it's got it's crossed over with the asset type. The template has been applied. It's updated my location to the hardware location. It's kept the original information on the rotating item showing what it's coming from, but it's also brought over the serial number that we recorded. It also has our vendor and manufacturer, our purchase price information here. It did not update an installation date because we did not apply one to the template. And then if I come over to the specification side, you can see that we've classified it and we've also put in those attributes. And then the last piece we will take a look at is on our work tab. We're going to see that we have now a PM record that has been created in a draft status. So really our last step here would be just to make this record active so that it hits our Wogen cron task that runs. And we're ready to go. Okay. Are there any questions? I'd love to open it up to the group to see if there are any questions on anything that we walked through today.
So I do have a couple of questions. I think you may have already answered them, but I'll go ahead and ask them just the same.
Sure.
Toward the very beginning of the presentation, so spare parts tab is for materials, which I believe you did that.
That is correct, yes.
And then templates and attributes are the same, question mark?
No, whomever asked that question, are you able to elaborate on what you're asking?
I think, again, this was toward the very beginning, so we probably had already answered that. I think it was.
Okay, I can try again here. So like the template is the shell of the information that you will apply in various places, like an asset template to create an asset, a master PM to create a PM record, a job plan to create a work plan on the work order. I can see now as I'm talking this through how the attributes could be considered that. The classification is more of a template to say, you know, this is the type of asset or item or location. And here are sort of the key characteristics that we want to track about that, that item or that asset or that location. If that doesn't clarify, please feel free to speak up or put in another question.
Those were the only 2 questions that we have from the audience so far. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to cover. We still have a few minutes left. Oh, here we go. They'll start popping in now. Which version of Maximo can this application be used?
So this is available in 7.6. I believe it came out, I want to say it came out in 7.5 and would be available in anything newer than 7.5. So everything in the 7.6 suite.
Okay, I believe that's all the questions we have right now. So
Okay.
I want to thank everyone for attending. We will be sending a link to the recording of this session and a copy of the slide deck within 24 hours of the broadcast. Leanne, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, there's not. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you attending today.
Great. Well, this concludes today's webinar. On behalf of Leanne and everybody at Cohesive, I want to thank those who attended today and who are watching after the fact. We look forward to seeing you at our next Back to Basics webinar, where we will be discussing the functionality in Maximo Mobile. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.